Okay, Itafana, we've got one presentation to go that's standing between us and afternoon tea and networking. But before we move on, just around to the networking, so we will have our afternoon tea, and then the networking function for those of you who've got little stars on your stickers. I'm running out of words. Who have registered for the networking, that networking function will happen in a room that I will tell you about later. Okay, so our next speaker is Eve Price. Eve is a portfolio manager at ConCOVE, and she's dedicated her career to adult education, working both overseas and in Aotearoa, from English as a second language to settlement services. More recently, vocational education and training. She's consistently championed developing people, growing participation, and reducing barriers. She is going to share some insights today about how to support tradies to thrive as business owners. Welcome, Eve.
Kia ora, everybody. For those of you that are paying attention, on your little notebooks and on the program, it says that I'm Dr. Kate Bryson. I am not. I'm the lesser qualified, lesser informed version of Kate, who unfortunately is unwell and can't be with us today. So you'll have to put up with me instead. I do want to mihi to Shamabil for two reasons. Number one, he's taken a huge weight off my shoulders because I was quite concerned that I was going to be the first person to say fuck up here today. But he did that for me. Number two, he actually set up this conversation really well with what he mentioned at the end, the work that he's done with Toi Mai around the support skills that people actually need to run their businesses. And that's basically this whole project. So the project itself, which we've called Pathways to Successful SMEs, I'm preaching to the converted. Construction is dominated by small and medium enterprises. You all know this. So the reason behind this was that I became acutely aware of the failure rates. I saw a statistic about it, which I'll show you shortly, which really stopped me in my tracks. And I thought, oh no, we need to do something about this. So we know that people have the trade skills, and that's exactly what Shamabil was talking about previously. They're very competent in the technical aspects of their job. And because the industry is dominated by small and medium, the idea is that if you are employed or you've done your apprenticeship with a small and medium business, the kind of natural career progression is to then start your own business and to become a small and medium business owner yourself. That has issues with that model. The impact of all of this is on the industry itself. It's on the stability and the quality of the businesses that we have and on the workforce retention. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to do a little bit of desktop research to kind of present the problem properly. And then we did some interviews, some semi-structured interviews with some key informants, while also bringing into those conversations some of the models and the themes that exist overseas in other models, vocational education models, to see what we could adapt and adopt. It's not a copy-paste, fear not. No one would ever have allowed me to do that in the key informant conversations. These were the statistics that concerned me when I first saw them. So any construction business set up this year, 60% of the construction businesses set up this year will not exist in 5 years. And I just thought, what the fuck? So we all know the other numbers around construction, the contribution that it makes. We also know the mental health issues that construction faces. And of course, it would be reasonable to predict that this high business failure rate is also contributing to some of the mental health issues that we're seeing in this industry. So we spoke to some very sensible people who told us some very sensible things, and also told us that some of our ideas were a bit rubbish, so we chucked them out. But we talked about why they're failing, and a lot of that came down to that kind of cultural norm of, where do I go if I'm employed in a small and medium business, but I want that career progression? Well, kind of, where do I go? I go and create my own business, therefore replicating a lot of those cycles and those issues. Issues with that cash flow pricing, that planning, that foresight, and the boom-bust cycle that we heard Shamabil talk about in detail, and people not really knowing how to weather that storm. We talked about the role of vocational education and training, and its role in teaching people what they need to know before they need to know it. So it's that preemptive knowledge before it gets too late. The skills gaps were really interesting for us. It was around sort of how to price a job, how to do the quotes, the project management and the planning and the phasing of the work, as well as some of the more technical aspects of the compliance, but also the awareness of what was involved in becoming a business owner when you're transitioning from having been a contractor, an employee, an apprentice. We talked about the German Meister model. I won't go into too much detail, but for those of you who are unfamiliar, the German Meister model is sort of that, I'm going to use some old New Zealand terminology, kind of a little bit like the old trade certs, which actually came out, the advanced trade certificates, they came out really prominently in the conversations, and we were quite surprised because people were really kind of, maybe they were nostalgic, but there was a lot of, oh, wouldn't it be nice? So we sort of talked about what was that system. The German Meister qualification is a prerequisite for you to set up your own business. So if you do not have this level of qualification, you can't open your own business, plain and simple. That qualification is kind of 3/3. A third is that peak craft technical knowledge. A third is business management. And the final third is that teaching and training, because the expectation is that if you're setting up your own business, then you're paying it forwards and you're then taking on apprentices. And the Germans believe that you need to be trained on how to do that. It also means that there's a different visibility of pathways from becoming a business owner to one day teaching at a polytech or in work-based learning, sort of what Mike alluded to this morning, where he did a workshop and off he went. Hey presto, he was a tutor, congratulations. We also talked about the minimum business requirements that might be necessary, because it was widely agreed that it is very easy to set up a business. In fact, if somebody wants to hand over their credit card, I can do it now. And that's a little bit too easy. That, I mean, yeah, I have some construction knowledge because I'm here flapping on about it, but I should not be allowed to start a construction company, but I technically can. So we broke the recommendations, and I have no idea how long I've been talking. I didn't bring my phone up, so tell me when to stop. Brilliant. So we broke this down into 2 sets of recommendations. First of all, we have the sort of the educational, vocational education recommendations, and then we have the non-educational recommendations. We are in the process of validating. So this is not gospel. It may all still change, and that's kind of what I want to hear from some of you today. So to start with the education recommendations, we sort of looked at that third model in the Meister program, the Meister qualification, went, right, what's at the heart of that, and how does that align with what we've heard from our key informants and our research about the skills gap, the knowledge gap, the expertise gap. So what would be useful in terms of kind of aligning the two to come up with our own hybrid model? So we've proposed them as micro-credentials, and there's, advantages and disadvantages to that, as with everything in life. We've proposed 3 micro-credentials that could be stacked towards, note the language here, a higher trade qualification, named TBC. The first part was around that technical expertise, second part, that business knowledge, and the last part, that teaching and mentoring and that delivery aspect of working with apprentices, again with perhaps in mind that coming off the tools and moving into that more delivery space. The idea of the micro-credentials is that they could be delivered all in one go, all together. They can be done at different points during your career on a needs basis, but that cumulatively they can also give you a full qualification equivalent to perhaps what we might see in some of the European models. We've also suggested that there might be an opportunity to have an optional strand, and I can see Kat looking at me going, oh God. We thought there was an opportunity to discuss and explore an optional business strand in an apprenticeship for people who kind of already have that in mind, that kind of pathway in mind, and who can get that skills and knowledge and expertise up front, even if it then makes them go, actually, I don't want to do this anymore, that's not for me. Still a great outcome in my book. And then the current, I'm going to call it business training for want of a better term. There's a lot of stuff out there, don't get me wrong. And that is perhaps part of some of the issue, is that there is so much that people don't know what to access. They don't know what is going to be of value to them, what is going to give them that return on investment in terms of the practical, applicable skills that they would need to be successful in this space. So we're suggesting that part of that issue is that it's not contextualized to a carpenter versus a plumber versus a hairdresser. So we are suggesting that contextualizing it to a specific trade, a specific industry, would actually make a world of difference in people's participation and uptake of some of those training opportunities. We've also looked at some non-education recommendations, which I think are going to be wildly unpopular. The first one is around a business readiness licensing model. So this is essentially, what do you need to have in place before you can start a construction company? Because I do not think that I should be allowed to start a construction company, and today as it stands, I can. There is a conversation that we are undertaking with MB because there is some work in play at MB on this already, and so we are working with them to understand what they're doing. Is it kind of what we have in mind, or is it different? Is their idea better than ours? The second aspect of this is we're proposing that business registration could happen in phases. So you could set up your business and you could start trading, et cetera, but that for you to then become GST registered, which is kind of the next step, for you to become GST registered, there might be another little bit of learning that you have to do, or that you have to demonstrate that you have some of the skills and knowledge to be able to understand what underpins our tax system, the GST system, in particular the provisional taxing and all of that often trips people up in the subsequent years. So those are the two sets of recommendations that we have. As I said, we are still consulting on this. The project runs for another month, so we're at that kind of, hey, what do you think, people? And that's exactly what I'm going to be asking of you today. I would like you to help me and Kate, who's doing a great job of standing quietly next to me. Can you help us refine these recommendations? So of the and I can bring them, well, she says confidently I can bring them back. Yep, I can. Of these recommendations, which ones do you think would be the top priority? Because as we know, ConCOVE has a finite amount of time left. Can't do all of them between now and the end of the year. So which ones do you think would be of most value for not necessarily us, but for the wider us to focus on as a priority? The second thing that I'm interested in, and not necessarily hearing from you right now, but maybe afterwards or subsequently in my inbox, what are the opportunities that you're aware of that you might be leading or undertaking yourselves, where some of this can be integrated, or some of these conversations can be had and held and leveraged as part of work that is already in play? And who is there that we haven't considered yet that you can partner with, that we can partner with to implement some of these things? So those are my requests for you, because I've done all the work. It's now over to you guys. So I'll just bring back up these recommendations, and genuinely, by a show of hands, because there's only 5 that we want to go through, I want to hear from you which ones get the highest votes, basically. So option number 1 is the stackable micros towards an undetermined name of a higher level qualification. I have a hand already. Thank you. Wow. Okay. Yep. Love it. Thank you. Number 2, optional business strand in apprenticeships for people to kind of start pursuing that opportunity and that thinking. Not as much. This is helpful. Thank you. Trade-specific content. So this is, the business training material that already exists, but contextualizing it to roofers versus, yep, some support for that. You like that? You're doing it? You've got it. Fantastic. Problem solved. I can cross that one off already. Now this is where we're going to really hit our stride. The non-education recommendations, business readiness licensing model. Do you believe? Oh, thank you. Do you believe that there needs to be something in place before people can start a construction company? Don't be shy. Thank you. Okay. I appreciate that. Thanks, guys. And mandatory tax literacy before GST registration. So that's that kind of staged. You can set up a business, but before GST registration. Okay. Well, that's what we want to see. So we've had some conversations with the likes of registered master builders, because there's already certain models that exist. Again, not a fan of duplication, because if someone's done the work, I don't want to do it. I'm an inherently lazy person. So we want to see what would modularly fit with what already exists, so that we're not replacing or replicating, but what already exists that could contribute to this. Also, for those of you that have ever done much work with me, you'll know that I'm a big fan of that RPL conversation. So I will never mandate a one pathway only. So yes, you might not get the micro-credential through delivery through BCITO, but what else do you have that can still give you that same level or equivalency that still unlocks that door for you? So it's not a purely, there's several kind of trajectories in, and that's part of the mapping that we're doing with that consultation with stakeholders as well at the moment. Thank you very much, guys. That is it. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Eve. It was lovely listening to you.
Thank you.
And just a reminder that there's a tonga here in what was created by ConCOVE over the last years. Let's be really, really serious on how we are going to take that forward and make sure that that work does not get lost.